Heartbeat. The Pulse of Care podcast is all about caring. How do we care for the vulnerable with dignity, respect, and compassion? How do we care for our bodies and our planet? And how do we care for each other without sacrificing our own health and well-being? Heartbeat, the Pulse of Care podcast creates space for courageous conversations for healthcare professionals about self-care, patient care, and what it means to weave our hearts into the sacred work of caring for others, caring for ourselves, each other, and the planet. Produced on the ancestral and unceded lands of the Snuneymuxw Nation, Heartbeat Podcast is a production of Foreign Israeli Yoga and Meditation.
Hello, welcome to Heartbeat, the Pulse of Care podcast. It's an absolute honor to have you join in to our very first podcast. My name is Corinne McKell. I am a clinical nurse educator, and I also work in a very busy inner city ER as a nurse. And the reason why we're doing these podcasts is to bring various disciplines in the helping profession together to talk about the work that we do, about the meaning of the work that we do, and to talk about some of the challenges and also how to support ourselves and each other in doing this really important work. I acknowledge that I am joining you from Beaver Hills House, commonly known as Edmonton, Alberta, here on Treaty 6 territory, land of home and land of Indigenous peoples since time immemorial, including First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, whose way of living and presence continues to enrich my life and these lands that I work, play, raise family, and live in community with. Welcome, Xochitl.
Thank you.
Xochitl Hanson Pastran is my very first guest. So thank you for being so brave. Xochitl is joining us from Vancouver, where she works in full scope as a family medicine doctor at the Luma Clinic. Xochitl has a passion for working with marginalized communities and working in Indigenous health. And I'll let Xochitl speak a bit more about herself and the work that she does. So hi again, and thanks so much.
Thank you, Corinne. Thanks so much for having me on this podcast. I feel very honored to be here and looking forward to telling you a bit more about my work and just to tell you a bit more about myself first. So my background, originally, I'm from Nicaragua. I was born there on traditional Torotega territory in Esteli. And my father's side of the family is Mestizo Nicaragüense and Indigenous Central American. And my mother's side of the family, it has ancestry from the Ukraine and Norway and Sweden. So I actually grew up mostly in Canada as a settler in these beautiful lands, and grew up in the same territory as you, in Treaty 6 territory. Was blessed to grow up in the homeland of the Métis and Cree peoples in beautiful Saskatoon. I moved to Vancouver about 5 years ago and currently practice here on unceded Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations territory. And I also go up north and work in Bella Bella, which is the Heiltsuk First Nation territory. In Vancouver, as you mentioned, I work at Luma, which is an interdisciplinary primary care clinic, and we work as a big team for our patients who are all Indigenous, and we try really hard to create a culturally safe and compassionate workspace for everybody there, for our patients to feel cared for as well. And we work together, the doctors and nurse practitioners and nurses and dietitians and pediatricians, together with the social workers that we call social navigators, and our counselors, who are amazing, and a wonderful team of elders who work out of our healing room that's just down the hall from the clinic space. So it's nice that we all work under the same roof, and you can hear the elders performing ceremonies with patients and drumming circles, and we will have a sweat lodge in the back where they can also do different ceremonies soon. And so it's a really wonderful place to work and get to, yeah, just find wonderful connection with Indigenous people from a lot of different First Nations, mostly from BC, but also Inuit and some from other parts of Canada as well.
Oh,
yeah, and
yeah,
it's really wonderful. And in Bella Bella, I feel really blessed as well, because the Helsik First Nation there is just a beautiful place to go, and the hospital is one of the only hospitals on a First Nation territory, on a First Nations reserve in Canada. And so it's a special place to work as well, and I really love the community and the people there, and yeah, and I get to practice, like you said, kind of full scope. So, getting to do emergency medicine there, and hospitalist work, and long-term care, as well as the family medicine, really kind of using all of the skills that I have.
Oh, that's amazing, Xochitl. And I'm so happy to learn more about the clinic that you work at, and to hear about that holistic modality that is so imperative to healing, right? To be, encompassing all the different parts of ourselves, and especially that, spirituality that is so important to our overall health and well-being. And then, of course, with the being in that center with the elders and social navigators. That's brilliant. I love it. It's so obvious, Xochitl, that the work is that you're so passionate about it. So can you mind just telling us a little bit more about why the work is so meaningful to you?
Sure. My work is meaningful to me because I get to connect with others, and I get to help others. So those two things are, really rewarding, and I'm really blessed to get to do that as part of my job. As a family doctor, I do feel like I'm in a very special role in people's lives, and people can open up to me, and do open up to me. And for me to be able to hold space for that, and hold people's stories close to my heart, and to allow them time for me to listen to their stories and their experiences, and to be someone who can form a therapeutic kind of relationship to someone who might have been through something very, very difficult, or is helping a family member through something very difficult, and to not only be able to hear that, but to help in a tangible way, for people going through lots of different really difficult things, like anything to do with health. If someone's really, really sick, and you can actually do have the tools to make them feel better, and then you see people healing, and you see people recovering, and you see people feeling better, and it's just the most rewarding thing to get to help people along that journey. And I think also, like, some some people that I work with have been through a lot of trauma, and I can tell that it's not easy for them to build trusting relationships with healthcare providers, probably because of ongoing discrimination and racism that they've experienced in the past. And so, you know,
Probably still do. Sorry to interrupt.
exactly. Yeah, ongoing racism for sure. You know, that there's it takes a lot of time and effort, and repeated visits, to kind of build up trust. But I feel like because I get to have that, with patients that come to the clinics, you know, I can build trust with people that find it difficult to, and that's really, really rewarding as well. And, you know, I think what makes it feel meaningful is just, you know, connecting with a compassionate heart. So the qualities that my heart feels when I'm being compassionate with people that I'm working with is an openness, a connectedness, and an interconnectedness with their vulnerability and my own vulnerability. I realize that we're, you know, as human beings, you know, we all have a tenderness and we all have vulnerabilities that are so shared. And when I feel this great sense of care in my heart and am able to use that in a space to just be more present and open and listening, and for someone to feel heard, you know, I feel like that's healing for me and, you know, the patients that I'm trying to help in that way. So in some ways, being a family doctor and being in a caring profession, I get to practice compassion. And that's honestly one of the things that makes me feel like my job is the most meaningful. And I'm very lucky to get to do it.
Oh, that's amazing, Xochitl. Honestly, that when you're talking about that relationship that you have with your patients, you know, I recently learned that the most important intervention as health professionals that we have is rapport. You know, like you're saying, right, is that for your patients to trust you, to feel connected to you, that is going to help them not only with that, you know, that feeling of being supported and heard, but also that's where they're going to most likely, that's how they're going to most likely follow along with what you're prescribing or what you're recommending, because that trust is there. And to hear you speak about how rewarding it is, and I totally agree. It's so rewarding to, and an honor, right, to be trusted by people, sometimes at the beginning strangers, with their health and overall well-being. And that makes them work so meaningful. And when you allow yourself to be vulnerable with the patient, that really builds that trust. Like I said, I agree with what you're talking about. When caring that deeply for other people and holding space for people in their pain and suffering, it can have an effect on us as well and our overall well-being. And I didn't know this for a very long time. I remember getting ready to go to work for a 12-hour shift, you know, Saturday night, busiest ER in Canada, putting on those scrubs and feeling like it was my coat of armor. And that it was just that, like, it was like going to protect me, and that I was not affected by the work that I was doing, by the pain and suffering that I was witnessing. And like I said, it was a really long time until a friend of mine who's not in healthcare at all had first even suggested that it was taking its toll on me.
Mm.
And I remember being offended.
Mm.
I remember being like, this is who I am. That's why I do this work, is because I can do it. No, it doesn't affect me. And, you know, I've learned a lot since then. But it was not part of my, it's just actually kind of more recent. And I've been nursing a really long time. So I'm curious, Xochitl, secondary trauma or vicarious trauma, by definition, there's a distinction, but, you know, they're both meaning that when we bear witness to somebody's, you know, as they are healing a significant trauma they had in their life, and part of that healing is retelling the story. When we're a care provider, bearing witness to that, or even not a significant reliving or retelling, but as you said, you know, all day, every day, with an open heart, caring for people, and while they're suffering in pain, can have an effect on us. And there's tools and strategies we can do to support us. I'm curious, you being a newer grad than me and coming out of medicine and not nursing, is vicarious trauma or secondary trauma, is that taught in med school?
No. No, it's not, unfortunately. And you're right. It's definitely something that, you know, we probably experience on a daily basis. I hear where you're coming from, and I think it's really, really common for, you know, nursing and like nurses and doctors and a lot of other healthcare providers to, you know, try and have that disassociation, you know, when we're at work, between us and our patients, so that we can be sustainable.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very common way to deal with the types of stress that are inherent in the work.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I can totally understand how that, you know, came about and in your work. And you know, for me too, it's not always easy to be, you know, open and compassionate and caring and you know, wholeheartedly present with someone, especially, you know, if someone is in a suffering state and they're not being pleasant to be around, right? It can be very hard. But I find that like a lot of things, it's a practice that comes easier when I'm rested and when I'm fed and when I'm practicing mindfulness and gratitude and self-compassion in my own life. Like when I'm taking care of myself and using a compassionate heart to respond to my own inner difficulties, then that's when I'm able to, you know, extend that to others, even if, you know, they might be unpleasant and or it, you know, it is hard in the workplace. My journey as a medical trainee and now a provider, there's been many times where I've had to sacrifice sleep, and I think there's also a lot of pressure, a lot of striving in medicine to not make any mistakes. And obviously we don't want to, but you know, we're human, right? And that's something that all humans will do at some point, is make mistakes. But you know, I think as a perfectionist, as someone who you know, went through this training with a fear of failure, you know, those kind of pressures created a lot of anxiety. And And I'm grateful for that being in my path, because I think if it wasn't for that anxiety, I probably wouldn't have started trying mindfulness practices. But I really needed something to deal with the anxiety that started really being in a big part of my experience during my training and my work as a doctor. I still struggle with anxiety. So, but when I did start mindfulness back in medical school, just stuff like meditations and body scanning, breathing exercises, those kind of things. And sitting with groups of people and in sanghas and learning more about Buddhist psychology and philosophy that would help me a lot with my anxiety. I began to realize that stuff was actually helping so much with my work, and so it kind of started with self-compassion and I think a journey of self-healing that made it possible for me to understand where other people might benefit from some a tidbit around self-compassion or mindfulness that might help them in their journey of healing as well. And so it's very interesting, the heart space too, when you're being self-compassionate, and that when I feel like I've had a really difficult patient encounter where I have experienced vicarious trauma. For example, a lot of my patients are residential school survivors, or survivors of the 60s scoop, the foster care system, the criminal justice system, which is, just very, very racist. We have horrible legacy of all those things in Canada, and just ongoing horrible things that happen to people that are Indigenous because they're Indigenous, and that's it. Just the amount of racism people experience. So I hear a lot of horrible stories of abuse, all sorts of different types of that, and it is not easy sometimes going home, and that is where self-compassion comes in, and it has to come in. And if it doesn't, then it sits not well in you until you do sit and start practicing that stuff again. So just I feel really blessed to also have a partner who is a great listener, and also practices meditation and mindfulness, and is very compassionate, and friends who are very compassionate as well. And I think it's really important to talk to people when I feel like I need to cry for this patient, and I can anytime, whether it's still at work or when I get home, and just honor people's painful stories, and that hurts my heart to hear, and that that I'm trying my best, but this person that I'm helping is at a place where it might take many years or decades to see any sort of improvement in their symptoms or their wellness, or quality of life, or whatever it is. And so reminding yourself that you're human with limitations, and you're trying your best, and that it's important to take care of yourself too, are all like self-compassionate things that help me when I'm dealing with those moments. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Xochitl, it's so awesome to hear that. So much what you were speaking about, I relate to, and knowing that you're a newer, I don't know, like a newer grad-ish, that you already have that awareness, like that just makes my heart so happy. And so interesting, and I think just so cool how you said when you first started doing mindfulness that it was for you and to help you. And that's also, you mentioned earlier, what, enables you to be so present with your patients. And that is one of the many beautiful qualities of mindfulness, is that it is truly so helpful for ourselves and in our relationships with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And you answered my question. My next question was if you could tell me some strategies that you use to support yourself in doing the work that you do. And you listed so many of them. And I hope our listeners, heard you, and especially about self-compassion,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we do, when we're doing this work, to make it meaningful, to make it, you have to be that open, right? Or else it's not meaningful. And then that's just a terrible road to go down, which we're not going to talk about today. But having that compassion for yourself, because we're so, as healthcare providers, many of us are really, really good at taking care of other people, and to be thinking about other people and being patient with other people, but not always ourselves. And that has been one of my biggest learnings, is to have that compassion that I have for other people, for myself.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear that you're applying that too. It is so helpful. There are a few other things I could mention just to answer your
Yes,
question.
please.
Yes, I do have a few more ideas for sure. I think,
Awesome.
one of them that comes to mind is retreat, actually. Just and community building and community sharing of other people, either in the healthcare community or in a mindfulness community, or other religious circle, whatever fills your heart. But being able to share with people and sit with people and learn together, whether that be in a weekly kind of evening session, or a monthly kind of weekend retreat, or even an annual few day retreat, or something where you can carve out a little bit of time at some point, just to cultivate community and mindfulness and relaxation, any sort of relaxation. I think anything to get you back into your body. And some people, it's exercise. Some people it's yoga. And there's something that for everybody, that everyone will just know their own bodies and their own hearts and minds the best about what works for them. But I think every day trying to get some sort of relaxation or way to get into your body in a healthy way is very supportive of being able to handle vicarious trauma and deal with it in an emotionally intelligent way. And then something that I started doing a long time ago, even before I started other mindfulness practices, is journaling. I've kept a journal since I was a kid, but yeah, it's so wonderful. And I started doing gratitude journaling quite a few years ago, and I have to say it's one of the practices that I love returning to if I feel like I have strayed off of my mindfulness path or my compassionate path. I go back to gratitude journaling because it's easy to access, and it reminds me that there are so many things in every moment and every day to be thankful for, and that kind of thankfulness and gratitude does open your heart up, and it does give you a different perspective when you're feeling sad for either yourself or patients or colleagues or whoever it might be. it doesn't even have to be big things. You know, you can be grateful for your fingers, or, you know, your ears, like something that you use to communicate with others and hear them. Or, you know, you can be thankful for a friend, or you know, or a pet, or just to have clean water, or any small thing, you know, that you know, provides life to you. And it's yeah, it can just be anything. The lists can be as long or short as you want. But I think a quick gratitude journaling each night, like that's, if someone wants to try something, that one's one of my favorites for sure.
Oh, I'm so grateful for you, Xochitl, honestly.
Oh, I'm grateful for you too, Karine.
Like, that is the essence of this podcast, is to share ideas, and you listed so many of tools and strategies that we use to support ourselves, to you know, to improve our overall health and well-being. And really important, like you said, for, you know, you gave us some ideas. And if anything, I hope our listeners will explore in themselves what works for them.
Mm-hmm.
And like you're saying, because we all have different ways of doing it. So to explore what it is that's going to work for you. And the daily, I think, is really important, like to do something every day that supports your higher self, or improves your mood and your well-being. So in closing, I want to thank you so much for taking the time, Xochitl. That was really beautiful. And I just feel like it just captured what we really, really wanted to. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Karine, for allowing me to share and be here with you, and your first episode. And I'm looking forward to hearing more episodes and following you guys along, and hearing more about how this evolves in the future. And yeah, thanks again for the honor to be here.
Awesome. And I'm sure I'll have you back.
Okay, that sounds good.
And thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed, and all the best.